Hey guys, it's Pierre here, and tonight I've got a special focus on episode number 70. We're going to be talking about more of finances, but specifically, we're going to be talking about this whole aspect of faithfulness. What qualifies you for much, basically. Because at the end of the day, everyone is running after money in this world, but truly it's going to come down to those that trust the Lord that will see lasting wealth, lasting riches. And Jesus actually repeated this particular phrase that riches make unto themselves wings and fly away. And it's one of the Proverbs of Solomon, who, believe it or not, was the richest man to ever live. And so when we're looking at this, the first thing I want to establish again is that God gives you the ability to get wealth. Let's be clear about that. It's God that gives you the ability. After all, if you had any kind of issue in your brain, for example, right, the abilities that you have, the gifts that you have, it wouldn't matter much. So I want you to understand that God has given you that ability. It's His blessing upon your life. So it's imperative that you understand that. But why? Why exactly did He give us that blessing? Simple. To establish His covenant. That's what He told Abraham. So He has He puts much importance on those that will actually help establish the covenant. You see, Abraham was blessed, and he was blessed with gold, silver, rich, all kinds of riches, right? Cattle. But that's because God understood that Abraham would actually teach his son Isaac. Now, God was actually with Abraham, and He also was with Isaac. And again, He was with Jacob. And we even get all the way to Joseph, who literally 4 generations down, right? Here was Joseph, the Lord was with him. Now, understand the power of the blessing, understand the power of covenant. It didn't matter where Joseph went, whether he was in the house of Potiphar, right? Potiphar, who was the general, right, of the guard of the army of the king, he was a man that could clearly see that Joseph being in charge of his house was a good thing. And suddenly he allowed Joseph to run everything, right? And you know the story of Joseph, for example. The Lord was with him wherever he went, and that caused him to prosper. And I think it's so important to understand this whole aspect of the Lord being with you. This is a lot to do with covenant. And when the Lord is with you, everything else follows. Everything else follows. Joseph could go to a prison, and because the Lord was with him, suddenly he was running the prison. He was not the man that ran the prison, but rather he was literally put in charge on the inside, right, by the guard that ran the prison. But then eventually Joseph interpreted some dreams, and I want to quickly go through this story for you. But one day it seems suddenly he became second as the chief executive officer of Egypt, right under Pharaoh. Pharaoh, matter of fact, gave Joseph his ring, his signet ring, so, which meant that Joseph had the right to literally do anything in the kingdom. So the reason I'm saying that to you is because I want to remind you, Deuteronomy 8:18 says that God is the one that gives you power to get wealth. And I know we're living in a time where we've seen this whole prosperity message abused. So therefore, many put it aside. They put it on a shelf. But what the Bible says is clear. So we can either take Him at His word, or we can put it aside. Meanwhile, we go about our jobs, we go about our businesses seeking money. And the whole point here is very simple. You're going to have to learn to trust in the Lord. And when you do, you will lack no good thing. This is Psalm 34:10. When you trust Him, there's no lack, right? And this is a process. This is just like believing for healing. This is just like receiving what Jesus has already done for you. But understand, in this new covenant, Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath, which means rest. Labor to enter into rest. And I think this is where the world is running so much after money. That's because they do not understand the kingdom. In the prior episodes, we spoke about Matthew verses 26, right from chapter 6, verses 26 to 33. And in those verses, we see how Jesus said, when you seek the kingdom, you don't have to run after the same thing the world is running after. And by the way, I know as Christians, sometimes we do the exact same thing as the world. Like, we don't have a better covenant. 2, 3 jobs, as opposed to learning to understand. If you'll enter into rest, God can give you $1 million idea. He can give you an idea that will actually help you get out of debt, that will actually put you in a position where you can rise above your circumstances. Now, most don't want to hear that because it's going to take faith. And faith is simply you appropriating what God has already provided by grace. He gives you the power to get wealth, but he's not coming on the earth and telling you, go get wealth. He's not saying, here's the wealth. That's not what he's doing, because that would be illegal. Why? Because money is created by world systems, governments here, right? A coin has the name of the government it comes from. So therefore, it would be illegal for God to come and rain money on you. But he says, I've given you the power to get wealth. And when you trust in me, you will lack no good thing. And of course, Jeremiah 10:23 says that it is not man that directs his path, right? It is God that actually helps him. And the steps of a good man, in Proverbs says, are ordered of the Lord. So seriously, if you're going to trust God, right? Even in Proverbs 3:5, trust, don't lean on your own understanding. Do not lean on your own understanding. When it comes to finances, a lot of us, we do our thing, right? And unfortunately, because we're doing our thing, we've become our own God, right? Because then we're not allowing him, we're not truly trusting him with it. And that's a tough one, because Jesus says it is going to be tough for a man who's rich in this world to adopt God's ways of doing things. That's what he meant by it's tough, as hard as it is for the camel to go to the eye of the needle. The eye of the needle was the entrance to the town through the wall, where the camel had to basically bend down with its charge, right? What it's got on its back, its cargo, its burden, and it had to go through this small entry. In most cases, that camel had to be unpacked, go through, and then repacked on the other side. And to enter into God's kingdom, to enter into his ways, you're going to have to let go of your ways. You're going to have to let go of your burdens. And this is why Jesus, Matthew 11:28, is saying, come unto me, all you who are heavy laden, right? Give me your burdens, right? Because my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So wealth should not be something that's hard. It should not be something that's heavy. Matter of fact, Proverbs 10:25 says, the blessing of the Lord, what does it do? It makes rich. It brings wealth. And it adds no sorrow. If you look at the news, you'll see people that are rich and wealthy. And a lot of times you will see that they have a life of sorrow, involved in things that they ought not be involved with, right? And why? Because their soul has not been renewed, right? Their spirit is not renewed, and therefore they're not working on renewing their mind. So they are stuck in the old way of doing things. So let me quickly go through a parable for you and really understand this whole part about what qualifies you for this much, what qualifies you for wealth, basically. And it's the parable of the talents in Matthew 25, verses 14 through 30. Jesus shares this parable. And of course, it's a parable where this master is going to go away and he calls 3 of his servants and he gives each a certain amount according to their ability, according to their capability. But then once he hands them their talent, right, to one he gives 1, to one he gives 2, to the other one he gives 5. When he comes back, the one with the 2 comes back and says, Master, I've taken it and I've multiplied it. I've doubled it. Great. Excuse me. Then the one with the 5, He comes back, he's like, look, I've taken my 5 and I've doubled it. Now it's 10. But then the one with the 1 said, look, master, I know you're a man who reaps where you did not sow. So I know you're a hard man. Here's your money that you left. I had put it in a hole to guard it for you. Here's your 1 talent. And the master rebuked him. And he said, you know all these things about me? At least you could have put my money in the bank so it could have at least gained some interest. Which means God is looking for interest. And I'm talking about the gifts he placed in you in your life. If you don't do something with them, he's coming back and he's going to ask you, what did you do with the gifts and talents he put in you? Even though here in this particular passage, he's talking about money. That's what he told them. He gave them talents of gold. So now what happened to this man? He literally said, take the talent from him and give it to the one with 10. Wait, Jesus, how about giving it to the man who basically multiplied his 2 to 4, making him 5, and giving him an opportunity to double? No, he doesn't look at things that way. He looks at it as who's getting results. And the guy with the 5 has a greater ability. He turned his 5 to 10. So now he's saying, if anybody's going to get more, it's going to be the one who has more. Now, this is a spiritual principle that also applies to understanding. He says those that have more understanding, they will receive yet even more. And those that have little understanding, even what they have will be taken from them. And funny enough, how this talent speaks about faithfulness, because he that is faithful in the least, right? He can be trusted with much. And in yesterday's episode, we talked about if you're not faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will give you the most important things, the anointing? You know, how will you be able to touch the glory? How will you be able to enter into a place in the spiritual sense where you are walking truly by faith and not by sight? So I want to bring you to this place where you need to think, am I being faithful in the little? Because if God gives me the power to get wealth and I'm not seeing yet a manifestation of wealth in my life, I need to ask myself, am I being faithful in the little? Right? And this is a question you have to ask and answer for yourself. Are you being faithful, or are you taking what God has given you as far as your talent and you're burying it? You're hiding it. You're afraid to step out there. You're afraid to put your face out there because what will people say about me? Man, you know, my friend, who cares? You know, one day I was at a funeral this morning. This man who now has passed on from this world, I don't think he cares much about what you think about him, right? Especially now that this particular man happens to be in heaven. My point to you is this: one day you're going to pass on from this world. When exactly are you going to take action? When are you going to do what you're supposed to do? When are you going to be faithful in the little so that you can reap even more? When are you going to obey these spiritual principles and see them work? And I'm talking to myself in all this too, right? Because it's not enough to know it. You have to live it. You have to experience it and see it. I've seen it before and I'll see it again. And that much I'm confident of, because I know those are laws, spiritual principles. They will always work. So again, God gives you the ability to get wealth, but it's going to be up to you to step out and appropriate it. It's going to be up to you to step out and actually work the land. And in the process, his favor comes upon it. And before you know it, you're seeing multiplication. But before multiplication, there's addition, right? And sometimes there's even some subtraction and division to remove things that you don't need. So with all that said, if you're watching here on YouTube, go ahead, like and subscribe, and let me know what other topics you want to hear about. I still have a few more to touch on this whole aspect of kingdom finances for you. And then we're going to move into a most important one called healing. It's Pierre Laguerre. I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.